Have you ever felt that really frustrating business paradox where you're just incredibly busy, projects are lined up, revenue seems to be growing, and yet somehow the profits are just vanishing? It feels a bit like running a marathon, but the finish line keeps, moving backward.
It really does.
That's the core challenge we're diving into today. How businesses, especially those delivering customer projects or, say, professional services, can stop simply doing the work and actually start profitably running the work.
There's a big difference.
Absolutely. And we've got a fantastic primary source to help us unpack this. It's a really fascinating case study from the PM World Library. It looks at this tech firm, Next WOW Systems. They found themselves like booming with clients, but simultaneously right on the verge of collapse because their profits had just evaporated.
Wow.
Yeah. And this isn't just about, looking at the P&L sheet. It's about a really fundamental shift in how you actually operate. So our mission for you today is to unpack this paradox. We'll use Next WOW's journey, bring in some other expert insights, and hopefully give you some actionable steps. Steps to, identify and plug those profit leaks in your own world, turning all that hard work into real financial health. Okay, let's get into it.
Let's do it.
So let's dive right into Next WOW Systems' initial situation. Because on paper, honestly, they look like they're absolutely crushing it. Clients lined up, teams fully booked, revenue growing. I think it was by a healthy 18%.
That's right, 18%.
But then, at this tense Q2 board review, their CFO apparently just dropped a bombshell.
Yeah, the quote was something like, "We're growing revenue by 18%, and yet net profit is almost gone. We're too busy to breathe and barely break even."
Oof. That's stark. I mean, does that resonate with you listening, maybe in your own business or perhaps the situation you've seen?
It's incredibly common, unfortunately. And what's really alarming, and what the case study highlights, is how quickly things get risky when profits vanish like that. Next WOW was accumulating some severe strategic risks. Their financial buffers were razor thin.
Meaning they couldn't handle bumps in the road.
Exactly. They couldn't absorb project delays or unexpected scope changes or even, clients paying late. Imagine just one delayed payment on a big fixed price project that could suddenly mean struggling to make payroll.
Yeah, that's walking a tightrope.
Totally. No shock absorbers, no contingency for cost overruns, no cash to invest in better tools or even retain top talent. And they were getting dangerously close to potential litigation risk if a major project went sour, which they absolutely couldn't afford.
It really does sound like a house of cards. So they did a deep dive, right? What do they find were the hidden margin killers, as the source called them?
Right. They found quite a few things going wrong under the surface.
Like scope creep.
Oh yeah, big time. Scope creep had basically become business as usual. Lots of unbilled change requests just sort of piling up.
And project managers were just firefighting.
Pretty much. Instead of proactively managing, they were constantly reacting, partly because changes were handled so informally.
Okay, what else?
Well, a serious misallocation of talent. They had their, high-value senior engineers stuck working on low-margin contracts. Not ideal.
Definitely not.
And their contracts, weak, really weak. No penalties for late payments, no real leverage if clients push scope, basically no protection built in.
And the big one you mentioned earlier.
Right, perhaps the most damaging. Nobody was actually measuring profit margin at the project level. Profitability was just kind of assumed, hoped for, not actively tracked or managed during the project lifecycle.
Wow. So they weren't checking until it was too late.
Exactly. And that's the core realization they finally came to. Next WOW wasn't actually bad at delivery. The technical work, the engineering, they were good at that. But they were really bad at running delivery as a business. And that distinction, that's just critical for any service organization.
Okay, so they hit this crisis point. By the start of Q3, leadership decided enough is enough. No more busy but broke. They kicked off this company-wide margin recovery initiative. And this is where it gets really interesting, I think.
Yeah, this is the turnaround.
They stopped treating profitability like it was just, a finance department problem. They made it a delivery issue. Everyone, PMs, engineers, client leads, everyone had to start understanding the numbers behind their work.
That's a huge cultural shift right there.
Absolutely. And then they launched their margin recovery playbook, basically 7 parallel initiatives, each targeting one of those specific profit leaks they'd uncovered.
Okay, let's break those down.
Right. First up, scope was no longer just a suggestion. This was fundamental. Before, projects often started with pretty vague deliverables. Sales might have promised, flexibility to close the deal.
Which sounds good.
And it meant scope became this moving target. Clients would ask for more, maybe small things at first, without any renegotiation.
And the delivery teams?
They just absorbed it, silently. Well, a project margin just bled away.
Okay, so what was the fix?
The new rule was crystal clear. No signed scope, no start. Simple as that.
Easier said than done sometimes, though.
Oh, absolutely. But they stuck to it. Every single project now needed a full, detailed scope statement. We're talking specific features, clear exclusions, documented assumptions, quality criteria, the works.
And they enforced it during the project, too.
Yes. They implemented weekly scope creep check-ins. Anything that came up that wasn't explicitly in that signed scope, it triggered a flag. And project managers were actually empowered, maybe even required to say, look, we're happy to do that for you. It just wasn't included in our original agreement. Let's scope it out properly, price it, get it approved, and then we'll get right on it.
That no signed scope, no start rule, it sounds simple, but like you said, enforcing it, that takes real discipline, doesn't it? Especially if sales is pushing back or clients are used to that flexibility.
Huge discipline, a complete culture shift, like you said. But it directly connects to that broader principle our sources mentioned. Ruthlessly clarify scope.
Exactly. And it forces business development and project delivery to actually work as a team, ensuring you only do what you're actually being paid for. Seems obvious, but clearly it wasn't happening at Next WOW.
Not at all. Okay, so that was number one. Immense payoff there. Next, change requests became currency.
Ah, so stopping the freebies.
Precisely. This was another big shift. Project managers basically had to be retrained. The default answer couldn't be yes anymore. If a client asked for something extra, something outside that agreed scope, it immediately triggered a formal change request process. Priced, approved, or it just didn't happen.
And this actually ties into a concept called benefit engineering that one of our sources brings up. The idea is that change requests, while often seen as, a hassle, can actually be business opportunities in disguise.
How so?
Well, if you handle them right, there are chances to increase your margin by digging into why the customer needs that change. What's the underlying business driver? Next WOW PMs started learning to see them this way. It forces you to ask, for your own business, are these changes you're making actually opportunities you're missing, or are they just, free work?
That's a great question. Okay, third initiative. Governance grew teeth.
Meaning?
Well, Next WOW's old project governance, their review meetings were apparently quite polite. Status updates, maybe discussing roadblocks. Useful, sure, but superficial.
No real financial accountability in those meetings.
Exactly. There was no direct link being made between delivery progress and actual financial performance. Margin was something finance looked at, after the project closed. Way too late to fix anything.
So how did they give it teeth?
They transformed those project review meetings into proper financial control sessions. Every single active project, every review had to report on critical financial metrics. Things like cost performance index, or CPI basically. Are we getting the value we expected for the money spent so far?
Early warning signs.
Yes. Also, burn rate, earned value, which is crucial for seeing the true value of work completed against the budget forecasted margin at completion, financial risk exposure, even cash flow timing.
That's a lot more rigorous, but I've seen companies go overboard on metrics and kind of forget the human element. Did Next WOW risk just turning their PMs into bean counters?
That's a fair point. The goal, as described, was more about empowerment, giving PMs the data they needed to manage the project as a business.
Right, so it's about changing the mindset.
Exactly. It triggered this huge cultural shift. PMs had to learn to speak the language of profit. They started talking about margin erosion risk, or under-delivering on revenue, or even strategically pushing certain milestones to trigger earlier invoice payments.
And this aligns perfectly with what we see in best practices, tighten project governance. It underlines that foundational role of P&L management, project-level P&L, in driving smarter decisions. Sources like Cashflow Frog and Intech Group really hammer this home. Financial clarity is just key.
Absolutely. Okay, number 4. Time became traceable.
Didn't they already track time?
They did, yeah. But apparently no one was really analyzing how that time was actually being spent.
Ah, the black hole of internal meetings and miss.
You got it. They dug into their timesheet data and found this glaring gap. Only about 65% of the time people logged was actually billable client work.
65%? Wow, where was the other 35% going?
Into vague categories like internal, admin, non-billable client support, MISC. It It was basically invisible, unmanaged time.
So they needed more granularity.
Precisely. They rebuilt their timesheet system from the ground up. Granular activity codes became mandatory. Billable work, non-billable client work, like fixing bugs or excessive hand-holding. Internal work, with specific subcategories for things like pre-sale support, internal meetings, rework, training.
And that must have exposed where the real-time sinks were. It's like finally figuring out where all your loose change goes, right?
Exactly. And instead of just, cracking the whip and telling people to log more billable hours.
Which usually backfires.
Right. They took a more surgical approach based on the data. They saw lots of non-billable time spent on customer handholding, so they created better onboarding docs.
Makes sense.
They saw huge chunks going to internal meetings, so they slashed those by, I think, 60%. Rework was high, so they implemented root cause reviews to prevent recurrence. Admin tasks were bogging down PMs, so they set up a new PMO support unit.
That's smart. It really shows time being treated not just as a cost input, but as valuable currency. You have to know where every dollar or every hour is going. And this ties directly into what sources like Precursive and the WG podcast talk about the critical importance of improving utilization in professional services.
Right. Utilization isn't just about being busy.
No, not at all. Employee utilization directly impacts your revenue and profitability, but it's a careful balance maximizing billable and productive non-billable time, delivering value without burning out your team. Tracking it properly is the first step.
Okay, fifth initiative, and this one feels like a big mindset shift. Pricing got smarter.
How so?
Well, apparently one of the leaders at Next WOW asked this really powerful question. Why are we still selling time when our customers expect us to deliver results?
Ah, the classic time and materials trap.
Exactly. They'd been relying heavily on T&M billing, which, feels safe, but it caps your potential upside. It almost incentivizes taking longer, not delivering efficient results.
And it disconnects your price from the value you create.
Totally. And there was this compelling anecdote that really drove it home for them. They did this migration project for a client.
Okay.
The project saved the client something like $1.2 million annually. Huge value. But Next WOW only billed $140,000 for the work, based purely on the hours logged.
Ouch. That's a wake-up call.
Right. The penny well and truly dropped. They delivered massive value, but captured only a tiny fraction of it.
So did they shift away from T&M?
They started to, strategically. With backing from the CFO, their commercial team began exploring value-based pricing, especially for more strategic clients or projects with clear, measurable outcomes.
So instead of quoting hours, they started pricing based on
On the business outcomes.
Yeah.
Things like the cost savings they could deliver, or the revenue gains the client could expect, or maybe speed-to-market improvements.
And what were the results of that shift?
Pretty stunning, according to the case study.
Yeah.
Their average deal size went up by 31%. And the gross margin on those value-based deals, it exceeded 45%. Compare that to the 25–28% they were typically seeing on their T&M projects.
That is a massive difference. It really forces you, listening to this, to ask yourself, are you selling hours or are you selling impact? Because the financial difference can be huge.
Huge. Okay, sixth, contracts were upgraded. This sounds maybe less exciting, but it was critical.
Yeah, the boring stuff often is. What was the issue?
They apparently had a dangerously casual approach to contracts, often just accepting customer-drafted terms without rigorous legal or commercial review.
Leaving themselves wide open, basically.
Completely. Financially exposed, legally exposed. So this changed fast. They brought in a commercial lawyer, redesigned their entire contract framework, moved standardized master service agreements, much more detailed statements of work, SOWs, tied tightly to that clarified scope we talked about.
And these weren't just like cosmetic legal changes.
No. These were strategic risk controls embedded in the contracts. Things like tightening payment terms net 30 days, with interest charged on late payments. Clear approval cycles for deliverables, so clients couldn't just sit on things indefinitely. Formal change control clauses, obviously. Better protection for Next WOW's intellectual property. Refined termination clauses so they weren't trapped in failing projects.
That makes perfect sense. It's directly reinforcing that best practice of strengthened contract terms. It's proactive protection for the business, not just legal boilerplate.
Exactly. And finally, the seventh initiative. Talent and authorization were matched to margin.
Okay, what does that mean in practice?
Well, historically, Next WOW staffed projects almost like solving a scheduling puzzle. Who's available? Put them on the project.
Regardless of the project's profitability or strategic importance.
Pretty much. But as part of this margin recovery effort, They completely flipped that staffing model. They stopped assigning people just based on availability and started assigning them based on strategic value and project margin.
So the high margin, important projects got the A team.
Essentially, yes. Priority access to the senior engineers, the most experienced project managers, the leads with the best client relationships.
And the low margin work.
They looked to automate parts of it,
Mhm.
subcontract where possible, or in some cases, they actually started declining low-margin work if it didn't make strategic sense.
That takes courage, turning down revenue.
It does, but it freed up their best resources for work that really mattered to the bottom line. And it fostered another big cultural shift.
How so?
Project managers were really elevated. They weren't just tracking tasks anymore. They became commercial leaders. They were given clear P&L responsibility for their projects.
With support, presumably.
Yes, each PM was often supported by a senior project champion or sponsor. This aligns perfectly with that prioritize margin and resource allocation best practice.
And it also touches on concepts like the staffing pyramid, right? Ensuring you have the right mix of senior, mid-level, and junior talent aligned with your business goals and cost structure, not just throwing your most expensive people at everything.
Exactly. There's a great quote from their COO in the case study summarizing this change. He said something like, "Now we put our best people in before the fire starts, not after." That's how you keep margin intact.
That really sums up the proactive approach, doesn't it? Fixing
Mhm.
the plane while it's flying, but also making sure it's built right in the first place.
Absolutely. So those 7 levers really helped Next WW climb out of that busy but broke hole.
Oh.
But as they fixed the project level issues, they surely realized, that profitability isn't just about individual projects. Other parts of the overall enterprise operation can quietly drain profits too, right? What broader areas do they, or maybe our other sources, point to?
That's a great point. Because you can fix project delivery, but if other parts of the business are inefficient, you're still leaking money. One area highlighted by sources like Intech Group is broader cost optimization.
Which isn't just about slashing budgets, right?
No, definitely not indiscriminate cost cutting. It's defined as a business-focused, continuous discipline to drive spending and cost reduction while maximizing business value. It really needs to be treated as a strategic objective, with everyone understanding what it means for their part of the business.
And it's crucial, isn't it, to look at it from a cross-enterprise perspective, like looking at the whole process.
Absolutely. Otherwise, you risk sub-optimization, where one department cuts costs in a way that actually increases costs or complexity somewhere else down the line.
Or that idea of cumulative error, where small inefficiencies in early steps multiply and become huge costs later on.
Exactly. And another area, perhaps less obvious for a tech or service firm but still critical, is location strategy.
Location. How does that impact a firm like NextWW?
Well, even if you don't have warehouses, your office locations, your approach to remote work, these all have cost implications. There's a fascinating anecdote from Jill Sunshine about managing real estate. She realized she needed to sell a property in Bangalore only after actually going there and seeing the reality on the ground, not just looking at spreadsheets.
Ah, the danger of making decisions from a distance.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And she fundamentally shifted her company's view of location. It wasn't just a real estate project. It became a strategic business project designed to enable competitive advantage. In her case, she drastically reduced the number of physical locations, warehouses, in her example, by nearly 90% by seeing it as an enabler for the business, not just a property deal.
That's a powerful mindset shift. Even if you're not dealing with warehouses, poor choices about office space or even poorly managed remote work setups can silently bleed profits through hidden costs, inefficiencies, or even impacts on talent retention.
Definitely. And developing that location strategy isn't simple. There are loads of challenges that impact both the bottom line and, importantly, the employee experience.
Like what kind of challenges?
Well, the potential negative impact on employees, think about changes to commutes or worries about job security if locations are consolidated. You also need a proper workplace strategy, right? Open plan versus private offices, maybe investing in smart building tech for wellness. These all have cost and productivity implications.
And you mentioned making decisions from a distance, time constraints, getting funding, and just dealing with the raw human emotion involved. People often just don't want to move, even if it's just across the same office floor.
It's true. And while Next WW was focused on service delivery profitability, other types of businesses, maybe those dealing with physical products, have another layer of operational efficiency to worry about, the actual delivery of goods to
Right,
customers.
getting the product out the door efficiently.
Exactly. Sources like Smart Routes emphasize tracking key delivery performance KPIs. These are critical for managing efficiency and costs in that final mile.
What sort of KPIs are we talking about there?
Things like your on-time delivery rate, absolutely crucial for customer satisfaction and getting repeat business. Order accuracy, making sure the right items, right quantities get delivered without errors.
Fewer returns, fewer redelivery costs.
Precisely. Also, average cost per delivery, which needs to encompass everything: fuel, labor, vehicle maintenance, vehicle capacity utilization. Are your trucks going out half empty? That's wasted money.
And customer perception, too.
Definitely. The Net Promoter Score, NPS, related to delivery experience, gives you that holistic indicator of customer sentiment and loyalty. Poor delivery can kill repeat business, even if the product itself is great.
And I guess monitoring these metrics, maybe others like first attempt delivery rate or out-of-route miles, it all feeds back into that continuous improvement loop, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It drives cost optimization and can become a real competitive advantage if you get it right. It's all part of uncovering where that busy but broke feeling might really be coming from across the entire business.
So let's try and bring this all together. When you look back at Next WOW's journey, the ultimate lesson seems pretty profound. They didn't finally succeed just by working harder or faster. They succeeded by working smarter, by fundamentally changing how they operated.
That's right. They stopped treating projects as purely technical challenges and started treating every single one as a commercial contract, a mini business in itself.
Which leads us back to that core insight you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, that delivering quality profitably requires a completely different tool set, skill set, and mindset. It's not just an add-on, it has to be baked into the culture. And if you connect that to the bigger picture we just discussed, it really is about embedding that financial discipline, that strategic thinking into every facet of your operations, from how you first scope a project to how you review progress, right through to post-project analysis, and even beyond that, things like how you manage your physical footprint or how efficiently you deliver your goods or services. It's holistic.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? Well, it probably means taking a really critical, honest look at your own operations, from how you scope projects to how you track time, how you price, how you allocate your best talent. Are you just being active, or are you being truly effective and crucially profitable?
And maybe, as a final thought to leave you with, consider which of those 7 levers of margin recovery we discussed from Next WW's playbook might be the biggest blind spot in your current business operations. What single change, if you really focused on it, could potentially have the most profound impact on your profitability? It might not be the one you initially think of.